Welcome back, everybody, to Goody and Johnny Mo with the movies. Tonight we are doing a nice retro review for you, a little special film that I've been wanting to do for a very long time, and as you can guess, since we're both wearing the same style shirt, it involves Superman. And since June 14th, actually it would be this Friday 7 years ago, we got to experience Man of Steel for the first time in theaters. So I thought it would be kind of fun on the 7-year anniversary to do our movie review of this.
7th anniversary of what?
Man of Steel.
Release?
Yeah, 2013.
Today?
June 14th, technically, but this was the Friday of its release.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. That was timed out pretty well, huh?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah.
But this is the film that I know personally that I've been wanting to review for a long time. Over the last year and a half, that all these reviews that we've been doing. Obviously, we've done some franchises. We've done a lot of the Marvel films. We've done a lot of Star Wars films. We've only done a couple of the DC films, and it was the ones that we saw in theater while we were doing our reviews.
Which I think was just Shazam, Birds of Prey.
Shazam, Birds of Prey.
Justice League?
No. Yeah, it was before that.
Aquaman?
No, before. That was just before we started.
Interesting.
So now we finally get to go back and kind of start the whole like DC EU or DC Extended Universe, as they call it. This is the film that started this shared universe, this franchise. So
what episode are we at tonight?
we are episode 34 today, if everyone's keeping track. The last one that we did was our little Star Wars viewing order and rankings of the films, which we actually had a really fun time doing. So I hope you guys really did get to enjoy that and watch it.
Yeah, it turned out to be our number one
One of our biggest
our most
viewing.
watched views.
Yeah, no, that was great. So thank you all very much for tuning in.
Could be due to COVID-19 isolation,
Could a little bit. No one else has got anything else to watch, so they tune into us.
right?
All right,
But
so
it shattered the record.
for us anyway. So with that, we're gonna do a little drink of the night. Johnny Mo, what do you drink?
I am drinking my COVID-19 isolation beer of choice, which has pretty much been Bitburger from the bottle in a glass.
I'm going with a simple Sam Adams Summer Ale. Nice little seasonal. Cheers, man.
Cheers. So before we get into that, just a little note about the decor. I had mentioned to Chris before we started filming today that it was just coincidental that I was wearing my Superman shirt. I actually wore my Superman shirt this morning because I had to take a trip to my cardiologist. I felt like going in there, like the man,
give you some confidence.
the Man of Steel.
There is something to wearing a Superman shirt where it does give you a little bit
No,
more confidence.
no, it does.
Like mentally.
Literally,
Mentally it does.
because my original shirt was going to be one of my Got Beer shirts. And I'm like, no,
That's not good to
I'm
the
going to my
cardiologist.
doctor's office in my Superman shirt. I plan on getting a good seal of approval from my doctor, and I did. So it actually worked out.
No, well, Johnny Mo was completely unintentional. Mine was very intentional.
Yeah.
And especially since I'm wearing the actual Man of Steel emblem on mine. That I remember buying this shirt the week that the film came out at, oh God, who sold this? Was it like Hot Tea or Hot Topic? One of those in the mall. I remember grabbing it. Because it was one of the first shirts that had the new emblem on it for the film, so I remember going to grab that.
I can honestly say that I think all of my DC shirts have been gotten for me
Yes.
as presents from either my son-in-law Chris
Yep.
or my son-in-law Matt.
Yep. One of us got those. Got each and every one of them.
All of them. Every
Very
single
true.
one. But I like them, and I wear them all the time.
Now, it's definitely been no secret, as you guys, if you've been tuning in and listening to us for a long time, you know that Superman is my favorite superhero of all time. So, and when we did our top 10 films of all time, the Christopher Reeve, Superman the movie was my number 2 ranked film. And as much as I love that original 1978 film and Christopher Reeve, this film, when this came out, I thought did an unbelievable job in a few different ways that we're going to get into. But I mean, Superman has had some troubled history since the Christopher Reeve days. I mean, outside of Superman 1 and Superman 2, now you can debate which film you like better, the Richard Lester or the Donner cut of Superman 2. 3 and 4 were not done very well. There's one you haven't even seen.
No, I finally saw Superman 3 for the first time only within the last year or two. Pretty recently, I think within the last year or two. I just gone through my entire life, never seen Superman 3.
Yeah.
And I knew it has a horrible reputation.
For good reason.
Yeah, and even me, I was like, like I gotta watch it because like you gotta see Christopher
Oh, you
every
have to. Every iteration of
movie
it, yes.
of Christopher Reeve as Superman,
I
or
agree.
whoever's playing whatever roles are in there, and the movie is literally almost unwatchable.
Well, it's see.
It is. I've seen it once, and I don't think I will ever see it again.
Well, what's so terrible about the last couple of films in that original franchise is that Christopher Reeve is still very good
No,
to
yeah,
watch.
he
Like,
is.
he doesn't dial it in.
He's an icon.
He's-
He is the iconic, I think,
he-
Superman.
He
on
still
screen.
plays a great Clark Kent and a great Superman. It's just unfortunate that it's surrounded by a crappy story and a crappy script.
I agree.
Unfortunately, and the same thing comes with Ford. Ford definitely gets trashed as the worst Superman film out there.
I think 3 is worse.
You think 3 is worse? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think they're both the bottom of the back.
I think
I don't-
you're going to find that most people could go back and forth whether 3 or 4
What
is
is
worse.
Superman for? Quest for Peace?
Quest for Peace, yeah,
Yeah,
but Nuclear Man.
I don't know that I'd seen that entire movie from beginning to end in one sitting, but I've pretty much seen most of it,
Yeah.
and it is horrible.
It's a difficult watch, but again, I think there's Christopher Reeve does a great job, and he actually delivers some great lines towards the end of the film. That just unfortunately, just another awful story.
It's a cap to I want to say a quadrilogy,
Right.
and it's a shame because the first one is just so good. I mean, I put Superman the movie. It's easily in my top 100. It's probably in my top 50. I think it does. I think it did make it into my top 50. It's to me, it's an iconic film. It's I don't want to say it's a perfect film, but it really probably is the best, or at the very least, the greatest superhero movie ever made, because it was done before superhero films became a genre, where it was there was a predictable formula, and if anything, it helped to create the formula that would become.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of films have
superhero
followed
movies.
that formula. If you go and listen to many of the even Marvel directors speak, I know the Russo brothers. I believe even Favreau touched upon this at one point. Is that like they have looked at Superman the movie as that, not jumping point, but it's like it sets the bar
Yeah.
for origin superhero films.
Yeah, and I think some people might sit and say, well, there's certain aspects about it that break the rules of the superhero genre. And it's like, well, okay, 1978.
Right.
There was no superhero movie genre.
Right.
There were no rules. It was very typical of the 70s for people to own their films artistically. And every movie was different. And the same movie made by 10 different people would be 10 different movies. Whereas today, the same movie made by 10 different people would be the same movie. Pretty much, almost identical, and not with any sort of unique artistic stamp. And I think Superman the movie is a great example of that. I think it's just a fantastic film, and it's a movie about Superman.
Yeah. So we had those 4 films, and the last film of Quest for Peace was in '87, and then we don't have anything, no Superman theatrical film. Until we get to 2006, when we get to Superman Returns, which was kind of a continuation of the first 2 Christopher Reeve films. Was well received critically, did not do so well box office wise.
And who's the guy who played Superman?
Brandon Routh.
Brandon Routh.
Played
Yeah,
that role.
and I think he was okay as Superman.
Yeah.
I didn't like
Lois Lane.
Kate Bosworth.
Kate Bosworth, yeah.
I hated Frank Langella or Frank Langella. I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
As Perry.
Couldn't stand him as Perry White.
I did like Kevin Spacey as Lex. He was.
And I
thought he.
I didn't care for him too much.
I thought he had a stronger presence as Lex, but I mean, really, the film is okay. I'm not gonna. The film to me is not great.
It's just okay.
It's not terrible. Like, it's okay. I can watch the film. I think there are some nice elements to it that definitely pay tribute to the 2 Donner films, but but overall, it wasn't really lacking a lot of action. That they really tried to go for a lot more dialogue and some character development there. But unfortunately, it didn't do well enough to do a sequel. And then basically we had to wait 7 years.
It was definitely ended with sequel written all over it.
Oh, absolutely.
And it just was never greenlit.
Absolutely. And then I think just the box office numbers were not what they were looking for. And then unfortunately, that just kind of went away, and they decided to reboot and start a shared universe. And then we ended up getting Man of Steel.
Right. I mean, eventually, it just came down to I think it was typical of DC at the time that they had all their eggs in one basket, and they didn't really know how to think outside the box.
This was before the shared universes. You got to remember that too.
They would only even potentially remotely think of making a movie if it was Superman or Batman, and that was it. And it's like, and they weren't committed. It was a matter of let's wait for the box office, and then and not for nothing. I think they could have done. I think they could have done a better job if they would have thought broader instead of just let's just see what happens with this movie.
Right. Yeah, we're going to stay in this little box and that's it. Listen, Iron Man in 2008 changed the game. That was such a well-received film. It started off a whole new franchise. DC tried doing that, believe it or not. The Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern film
was supposed to kick off
the DC shared universe.
Unfortunately, was horrendous.
Although I love Ryan Reynolds, and I do think he did make it a pretty good Hal Jordan. The story was just terrible.
Well, Mark Strong was actually
great as Sinestro. Yes, I think the only thing I really would have seen going forward would have been Mark Strong in like a Sinestro war where he becomes the leader of the fear emotion, the fear.
I think Mark Strong might have been the only thing I liked about that film at all. Otherwise, it was completely horrendous.
I liked Ryan as Hal.
And it was a shame because I was looking forward to it because it was finally like one of these scenarios where it's like, okay, DC, get your uncreative head out of your ass, and start mining some more your other characters. Who are huge?
Because before that, you only did Batman and Superman films.
Yeah, you didn't even do Wonder Woman. It's like, are you kidding me? Now, and not for nothing, it's like there's more to DC than just Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Green Lantern, Flash. These are big names.
Right, and we still don't have some of those films yet. We still haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah.
So, I'm happy that DC's starting to really branch out, but, the fact that we still haven't gotten some main hero films yet is a little disappointing.
And then we get to Man of Steel.
But we do get a Man of Steel.
Which came out
they announced a new Superman 2013.
2013.
So, we definitely, I think 2011 was the Green Lantern film.
Right. And this was the beginning of the DC.
And now they decided that Man of Steel was going to be the shared universe. And I'm sorry, but you know what? It should be. Superman was the first superhero out there. Mm-hmm. He was the guy that brought the claim to fame to DC and was the #1 character for over 20 years. This was the guy that should lead the way for the shared universe.
Yeah, not for nothing. If you're a DC and you're trying to make a Superman movie, do it right. Make a good movie. Don't necessarily try and copy the original Superman the movie,
right?
Or
and then they did it. So let's talk about this film. Literally, I remember when this was coming out, I wanted to know so many different things.
You were I remember you being very gung-ho.
Oh, I wanted to know about the costume. I wanted to know about the music. I wanted to really find out what they were going to do with all this, because to me, the John Williams Superman theme is almost as iconic as the Star Wars theme that John Williams did.
Yeah.
To me, the Superman theme might be the second most recognizable musical theme in film history, other than the Star Wars theme.
Well, I was going to say Jaws, John Williams again.
Jaws,
John Williams pretty has you look like Raiders of the Lost Ark. So many of the iconic things is John Williams, and actually I think it was actually a good idea to not use John Williams for Man of Steel. Even though that might have, to some people, that might have been an obvious choice. It is now a break.
I would have liked
from that paradigm.
I'm going to say this right now. I love what Hans Zimmer did And we just rewatched the film, and I told John this at the very
Oh yeah,
beginning.
we're coming off on a fresh viewing. We literally just watched.
And like I have to say, like Hans Zimmer did a fantastic job with the score. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to this score. I think he did such a great job in reestablishing a new style for a modern Superman. That it doesn't take away from what John Williams did. It's just a new version for this new modern Superman.
I think they needed a new branding, because if they would have just went with, like, you know, either the original theme or a slight modification of it, I think it would have just been like, it would have forced people to draw a comparison to, as opposed
But
to
this film did that
keeping it-
anyway.
keeping it independent.
I think unfortunately the film did that anyway.
Did well.
It drew so much comparison to the original Christopher Reeve film.
Oh yeah, but I don't sit there and say, I wasn't sitting there with every scene going, okay, how did this measure up with
Right.
with the pre? How did this?
The-
And because
the only-
they weren't trying to copy it.
My
So I
one
think that was good.
my one critique in that, in fact, trying to save the original John Williams theme into this film, is that if you look at some of these other franchises that have gone decades, like Star Wars, let's say, that continues the Star Wars theme in the music. Look at James Bond. How many
Well,
different James Bonds
yeah.
there have been, and that's still, you still have that same James Bond theme.
Mhm.
So to me, could you have done the John Williams theme and kept it going, even though it's a new character in a modern film? I think you could have, but the fact that they went, when Zack Snyder and Chris Nolan sat down to talk about this film, because Chris Nolan did produce this, one of the producers of the film, they wanted a fresh take, as if Superman never existed. How do you bring him into the fold?
Yeah,
And they talked about
created their
basically,
own film.
they started everything from scratch. So I really, really love Hans Zimmer's music in this, and I think it's one of the best superhero scores that have come out since the shared universe scene in the mid to late 2000s. I have all the Marvel films and all the DC films. I really think this is one of the best scores that's out there. It has a memorable theme to it. The only other thing that might come close would be the Nolan Batman films, again done by Hans Zimmer, and maybe the Avengers theme that was done for the Avengers film. But other than that, the majority of the other characters, I can't really tell you or even think of how their other themes come about. I feel like it's not strung together as well as something like this. I want to say that and the other thing that I thought they did a really great job with in this, I loved the casting. Now, we might differ on this, but I really enjoy the casting.
I enjoyed most of the casting.
I thought Henry Cavill does a great job. I think he really embodies the modern Superman and what they're going for. I really enjoyed Amy Adams. I know there was like a little bit of push, give and take with her. I like her. I like that they made her an investigative reporter in this. I know some people are going to go back and forth. You and I initially disagreed with Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White.
Yeah, I think he's grown on me a little more. So just to talk about repeat viewings, I think when we went to see this the first time on theaters, I thought it was just okay, and I think with subsequent viewings, I think I like it more and more.
Okay.
I don't know that I absolutely love it, but it definitely makes it onto my list of favorite films, which is a very, very long list, hundreds and hundreds of films. Hundreds of films.
It's an honor to be on
But
John's list.
it makes it on my list. But yeah, like watching it now, which is either
It's probably your third, maybe
it's
fourth
probably my
time.
third time. It's definitely my third, maybe my fourth.
You saw it twice with me in theaters because
We saw it twice in the theaters?
Because we
Okay.
saw during the initial run, we saw it, and then we saw it in 3D when it was released a couple months later.
Okay. And I think I definitely have seen it at least one more time, in a home setting. So I would say this was probably my fourth viewing, and I think I do like it. I think I like it more and more.
I am actually happy to hear that because I really think that this film has had a lot of mixed reactions when it comes to fans. This is definitely a film that kind of split the fans a little bit. Yeah, well, especially with the ending. Oh, by the way, spoilers. With the ending with Superman
Why is
killing
the ending
Zod.
controversial? Oh,
Because
really?
Superman kills Zod. Between that and then and then all of the destruction that happens in Metropolis.
I mean, you're talking about basically just the totally purist people that go. That whole thing is you don't tug on Superman's cape. You don't tug on Batman's cape, but you can tug on Superman's cape.
No, you don't tug on Superman's
What is he gonna do? He's gonna tell you to
You never tug at Superman's cape.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I get that, but
Well, tell me about your casting. So what you?
okay. So
we were talking
casting
about that.
Cavill, I think I was okay with. I liked him. I don't know that I've been a big fan of anybody cast as Lois Lane. I think Kate Bosworth.
Kate Bosworth.
I think Kate Bosworth was the worst.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for Amy Adams too much, and Margot Kidder wasn't bad, but Margot Kidder's a little quirky, but maybe that was like good because it brought some personality to the role. But to me, nobody has embodied like the platonic, or not platonic, the platonic ideal of what Lois Lane should be.
No.
And to be honest with you, I think the best presentation I've ever seen of Lois Lane, I think, is from the Fleischer animated films from the 40s. Like that Lois Lane.
That when you hear Lois Lane, you think that character. You think that.
I consider that to be the best incarnation of the character.
Okay.
Because she's beautiful and strong-willed, and she's an investigative reporter, and it's like, I think the only people that got it right were the Fleischer cartoons. Like it scored a 10 on every level. Oddly enough, even I think better than the comic books. Oddly enough,
I enjoyed Amy in this. I think this was the best iteration of Lois since Margot Kidder.
Okay, so I was gonna say since Margot Kidder.
Since Margot Kidder, yeah. And again, and I agree with John. I think Margot is okay. Like I don't know necessarily how great her, how much of it was her and how much of it was the writing for that film.
Yeah.
So it's hard. I do like Margot Kidder in those films. I don't want to say that I don't, because I do, but I can definitely. I'm waiting for someone to pop more, and I do like what Amy did. I do think Amy is strong-willed in this, and I think she's a great investigative reporter. In the fact that, I mean, I'll jump the gun on this, but the way that she backtracks and figures out who Superman is, I thought that was genius to do. Get that out of the way. We're not having. Lois is not going to be, fooled by this guy in glasses. She goes out of her way to figure out who this guy is.
Right.
And she does it really well. And it's just believable how she just backtracks, and you just see her talking to all these people until she finally gets to Martha Kent's farm at the house, and she starts talking about her son. I thought that was just very well done. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's a modern day take on Lois Lane. She's not being fooled. She's figuring this out, and it just goes to show how good of a investigative reporter she is.
Now, the guy in Daily Planet is not Jimmy Olsen.
No, that's Steve Lombard.
Who is he in the comics?
Yeah, he is. He's like a male chauvinist in the office. He's a sports reporter.
Oh, okay. Because he totally. I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, there's no Jimmy Olsen, and is this guy supposed to be like the Jimmy Olsen? But he's really not like the Jimmy. He's like more of like
I think his name is Michael.
I've seen him in roles.
One of the biggest roles he had was House of Cards. He did that for a number of years. He's a good actor. I like him a lot. And even as Steve Lombard, I thought he portrayed the Steve Lombard from the comics pretty well in this.
Okay, and that's a character I have no.
Yeah, I mean he's a side character. He's a supporting character for the Daily Planet, and and that wasn't too bad.
And he was okay. He doesn't really have too much.
I think Michael Shannon is great as Zod.
I think he's one of my favorite characters in the whole movie.
I thought he did a very different from Terrence Stamp. The energy and seriousness that he brings to this role, and it's almost like he's living the whole I was bred to be a warrior,
right?
Like I was bred to care about the survival of Krypton,
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
enjoyed that.
I feel that his performance is a real, true performance. He's embodying the character.
Yes.
He's injecting himself into the character. He's involved, like from an acting standpoint. He's he's doing the body motions. He's doing the facial expressions and the inflections, and he's his
He
character
makes me
has
feel.
passion.
Yeah, he makes me feel every scene that he's in. Like the words that he's saying on screen. The way he's doing all of that, like you're saying, and how he like puts his whole self into it.
He's not
it makes you feel it.
Yeah, he's not reading off a script. You know, and I'll be honest with you, and I can I think there are examples of this in this film. There are a lot of actors and actresses today that when they do their lines, it's very monotone and somber, and they look all serious, and it's like there's no passion in it. There's no energy.
Yeah.
There's no expression. There's no creative way of interpreting it and making it your own. So many people just they do the whole acting thing. They take their breath and then they say their lines, and it's like I'm like, no, like that's, to me, that's not acting. That's orating. It's reciting. And I think there are people in this movie that do their lines that way. And those are the casting choices that I don't like, because I think these people don't bring much to the table, even though there's some well-known names.
Yeah.
And some people do. And Michael Shannon, I think, is definitely one of the standout performances. If not, if
he might be the best performance in the film.
Yeah, he's not my favorite performance in the film, but I think he is. I think he is.
Yeah.
I think he is the best performance in the film. Because you believe him, and he's a very strong character.
I think he is too.
Because he's not flawed.
Well, he's flawed.
I don't think so. I
think he's flawed.
It's funny. The more I watch his scenes, when he breaks into, the chamber in the beginning of the movie, to take over, I'm like, he's not wrong. And he almost kind of gives himself an escape clause, a way out of it, because he's been programmed, or like he's been bred, like he's genetically bred to be a general, to be a fighter, to be a protector of Krypton at all costs.
Yes.
And that's really what he's doing. And he's doing a good job.
His message of trying to protect Krypton is correct. The way he goes about it is probably where you could start to see how he's flawed.
Yeah, but if
because he does it to a fault, and to him, like, there is no gray area, there is no in between. It's either all or nothing.
Yeah, well, he's basically willing to sacrifice the Earth for the betterment of Krypton. And at the end of the day, a lot of people look at that and say, "Oh, that's so inhumane." But if you look at humanity,
from his point of view,
right? But if you look at humanity, like humanity in the same situation would do the exact same thing. If
to survive, yes.
To survive, we would wipe out any other lesser species to get our way. We need to expand. We just build cities and wipe out the entire ecosystem. We don't care. So it's very typical of humanity. But it's funny, like nobody draws those parallels when they like in the movie Avatar. The movie Avatar was like, oh, it's the end of the world, but it's like, oh, they're killing these people, but like, what are they doing? They're doing what businesses do every day. They just expand and take over and absorb the resources, and that's the end. But back to the performances.
But the other ones, I loved Russell Crowe. I thought he did a good job.
Okay, see, this is where we definitely disagree, because
you didn't like Russell Crowe.
I didn't like Russell Crowe at all. To me, a lot of his movies, he's got that same sort of acting style where he sits there and he talks all seriously and he doesn't raise his voice no matter what's going on.
Well, he's very subdued.
And to me, that's lazy.
He's very subdued. But I almost say that that's part of the character, because Jor-El is a scientist. He's a thinker. He's not going to be someone that's like overly aggressive like Zod, although he ends up fighting. How he fights Zod one-on-one to me is preposterous, because Zod's supposed to be a general and he's supposed to be a warrior. Yeah. He should have kicked the crap out of Jor-El.
Yeah.
So to me, that was something that I didn't really understand why Zach did that, because I understand Jor-El's fighting for the protection of his son, and that you could have had Jor-El struggle a little bit more and maybe surprise Zod, but he didn't do that. Like Jor-El kind of kicked Zod's butt for a little bit. I would have liked to have seen Zod actually win that fight, even though Zod does end up killing him.
Yeah.
But no, there are lines that Jor-El says in this film that I thought were powerful.
Well, see, he's got great lines, but to me,
Yes. But I think he's supposed to play that subdued character.
but like, it just seems to me like every movie he's in, he plays that character, and it's become his acting style.
Mm.
And to me, it gets boring after a while.
Okay.
You know, it's like scenarios like in the movie Gladiator. You know, there were certain scenes where he kind of pumped up the emotion, but you know, like when he's like this general in the battlefield, and he's trying to inspire his men to fight, and it's like, you know, he goes, "On my signal, unleash hell." It's like he says it exactly like that. "On my signal, unleash hell," and it's like he's the only people that can hear that are 3 people standing next to him. Like, I mean, like where's the where's
the emotion and the energy?
You're right, you know, and like.
But I don't think that's what this character called for, though. Like,
No,
I understand what you're saying.
Right, but I think there are certain times where the scene would benefit from that. Not
But there's
every
also-
scene,
but
not
there's
every
also-
scene going crazy.
But there's
like,
also something you have to keep in mind too.
Yeah.
The real Jor-El dies in the beginning of the film, so everything else that you're seeing is a computer program.
yes,
So,
no, I'm talking. I'm
from
talking mainly
from an
about
emotional standpoint. Like
yeah.
it's a computer program. So to me, like from an emotional portion, you're not going to get that. This person is going to just be
right.
It's just going to be
Yeah.
matter of fact.
For the computer program, Russell Crowe is the perfect actor for that scenario. He's very well cast for that.
The other ones in here.
And I'm going to go the same rationale with Kevin Costner.
Oh no, I will.
See, and
I will battle that tooth and nail. Kevin Costner plays an unbelievable Jonathan Kent.
You think better than I can't remember the guy who played in Superman the movie, Glenn Ford.
Glenn Ford.
See, I think the same. I think I have the same problem with Kevin Costner.
Glenn Ford didn't have that much screen time. Like
No,
Glenn
he
Ford,
didn't.
Glenn Ford had maybe 5 minutes of screen time, and that's being generous.
To me, Kevin Costner has like, you know, he's got that drawl, and he talks,
But none
it's
of
like-
that matters to me. What matters to me is the lines he's delivering and how he's delivering them.
Yeah.
When he talks about protecting his son,
Mhm.
and he's talking to him after he saves the bus, and he's basically, and you know, Clark says to him, "What are we supposed to do? Just let them die?" And Jonathan Kent almost doesn't realize, he doesn't know what to say. He just wants his son to stay protected. So he says, maybe. Because he's like, he doesn't know what to do. And then when he brings them down into the basement and shows him the ship,
Mhm.
now this is a scene that's almost right out of Secret Origin that was written by Jeff Johns a few years back.
Okay.
So basically, it's a very similar scenario where Jonathan shows Clark the ship, and Jonathan's telling him, shattering this kid's world, saying that you're not human. I've had this metal analyzed from these professors at universities, and it's not on the periodic table. So you're not from this world, and it shatters the kid. And
Yeah,
what does the kid?
it's amazing that none of that ever made it into scientific journals.
Right. Well,
I mean,
yeah.
I think the people would have been like, wait, well, you're just not walking back. You're just not walking
Yeah.
out of here with that thing in your pocket and going back to the farm. Like, you know, like, wait a second,
Right, this is new.
this is a new element.
This is-
Whatever
this
this is,
is
it's not even, exactly.
I mean, but I think at this point, you know, Clark telling him, "Can I just keep pretending I'm your son?" And Jonathan tells him, "I am your son." Like, there is an emotional component to the parents in this, especially between Martha and Jonathan and Clark.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those scenes really resonate. I love those scenes. I mean, I'm someone that I lost my father when I was a kid, so having that scene happen is one of my favorite scenes in this movie, because you feel that, to me anyway, I felt that emotional connection between the two of them, where Jonathan is like, this is his son. Biologically, no, but he raised this kid ever since he was a baby. And you know, you're shattering, you're basically telling this kid, not only, you know, you're not from this world, but you know, you were adopted, you know, and to him, it's all he wants to do is just keep on pretending.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Jonathan's like, but you already are. Like, you are my son. Like that. That scene to me was great. Like, I love the flashbacks, the flashback scenes that fill in these little gaps. Show a lot of heart with the Kents, and I think that was needed in this film to keep it grounded and to show the growth of like why Clark was the way he was up until he really became an
Right.
adult.
Well, I think it made sense to do the flashbacks because, like original Superman, the movie was done to me
Linear.
was done linear
Yeah.
in epic scale.
Yeah. And I'm glad that they didn't do that for this film.
Yes, I did. Yeah,
I'm
because
glad that when
I think it would have taken too much time.
when the spaceship crashes, we don't even see it crash. It basically we just see it hovering over or going to crash, in Kansas.
and then it flash
and then it
forwards
goes
to
right-
almost to the future.
Yep, right to where Clark is on
Yeah.
the ship on the
So what
fishing
you
ship.
do is you get these individual flashback scenes
Yeah.
of things that are of importance, as opposed to, I think, a long, extended growing up in Smallville scenario that I
Right.
think would have taken a lot longer.
Yeah,
Because
and
he
it's
would,
been done,
yeah.
and I'm glad that they kind of skipped that and they just picked
Yeah.
out these little scenes. Another really good scene is Clark when he's in elementary school and he starts to develop his X-ray vision, and he's able to look at through people and his super hearing starts to kick in, and he even has a moment of heat vision where he heats the knob of the door. He gets so scared that if you were a kid, at that point he's probably 6, 7 years old in
Yeah.
school, and all of a sudden if you're a kid and you start seeing all these things, you have no idea what's going on with your body. And he gets so scared he runs out, he locks himself in a closet, and he waits till Martha gets there. And Martha talks him out, and he doesn't know what's going on with him, and neither does Martha. You can see Martha's scared too because she doesn't understand.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, Martha and Jonathan Kent, they're Kansas City farm folk. So I do kind of get like Jonathan Kent is really just one of these guys who's he's a farmer. He's relatively simple. But he has his his morals.
He's got these family values.
They have family
Yeah.
values. They have church going people. As we've seen that Clark does have a connection to the church. And so like I think I just felt that Kevin Costner, his type of kind of, to me, like he's almost like very slow and almost emotionless acting. I think somebody else would have been able to bring more to the role, not by necessarily making it just full of vigor, just giving it a more, I don't know. I felt there would have been a more deeper resonance because the lines are great, the scenes are great.
Yeah.
And to me, I just felt like I just wish Kevin Costner would have brought more subtle emotion, driving these scenes.
One of my
Not
favorite
explosive.
One of my favorite Jonathan Kents is John Schneider from the Smallville TV series.
Mhm.
I
Okay.
always thought he was a fantastic Jonathan
Is that
Kent.
the guy from Dukes of Hazzard?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, and I loved him watching that series. I thought he was great. But I thought there were some flashes of that with Costner in this, and I thought that you could really feel the love of his son and how much he cares for him and wants to protect him this whole time. Eventually, and we get to that tornado scene,
Mm-hmm.
and this is one of those controversial scenes where a lot of people kind of make fun of, where it's like they feel it's kind of stupid. Like, why didn't he save his father?
Right. Or why didn't he let?
Just let the dog die.
No, not let the dog die. Let Clark go back and get the dog.
Right.
Like to me, it's like I don't like these things where it's like, people die to prove a point or to show a lesson.
Right.
It's like I saw these things happen in The Walking Dead where people let themselves get bit to prove a point. It's like, no, you're committing suicide. It's once it happens, you're dead. It's like.
But there was a difference between this and the Superman the movie, because Superman the movie, Glenn Ford dies of a heart attack.
Yeah, a heart attack.
And Clark is powerless to do anything, right? Like he couldn't have done anything.
I think that this scene, I think Kevin Costner's death in this movie would have made more sense had it been a scenario more where Clark was powerless.
But to me,
Clark couldn't have done anything.
But this is about choice.
Yeah.
And this is what and Kevin Costner's speeches to him when he was a kid are starting to ring true. Because at one point Kevin Costner says to Clark, says to him, at some point you're gonna have to make a choice, either to stand in front of the human race or not. Mm-hmm. Basically show yourself and protect everybody or not. And then the other scene that he has with him later on in the film is another flashback where he's like, you have to decide what type of man you're going to be, because whether it's good character or bad, you're going to change the world. So these things are all about choice, and Kevin Costner's speeches are basically setting this up. And this is one of those moments where he chooses not to act, and his father dies.
Right,
And I think
it's a teaching moment, and it's
it is, and it's. I mean, is it
stakes are too high.
Listen, is it convenient? Yes, but he's also ringing true what Jonathan had been teaching him his whole life, which is to protect your secret. Don't expose yourself, not even for me.
Right.
And I think that ends up. I think the death of Jonathan Kent ends up starting to become one of the driving forces for him starting to get out into the world and starting to save people
and do some good.
Yeah.
I think that brings us now to Martha Kent,
Diane Lane,
who, in my opinion, my favorite performance in the whole film. I think she is perfection in this movie. She just brings that, unique characterization, that emotional core, that
I think she brings an emotional
facial expressions and line delivery. Like she's not just sitting there being the, all wholesome bacon apple pie.
She's not just reciting the line.
She's not just, she's just like, I think she gives a fantastic job, and she, and she's like simple too. She's like a simple woman, but she's strong, and she has these convictions, and I just love it when she tells the the Kryptonian girl go to hell.
Yeah,
it's like
like that's Ma Kent, like protecting
her
son.
Yeah, it's those. Those are powerful words. She like, I love her performance in this movie. It's by far my favorite performance in the movie. I think she to me, she elevated this movie so much. And I don't even remember when I saw this movie for the first time, I was like, oh my God, Diane Lane was fantastic.
I agree. One of the supporting characters, Anche,
is this Fiora?
It's Fiora. Oh God, Andre Trim. I forget her name. I think she's a German actress.
Her I love.
She
Fiora, great.
She steals so many scenes that she's in.
She's like, she just plays this like, super cool, like
military.
She is like an adversary with, everything is by the books,
Yes.
100%. But I like her. Like sometimes a good death is its own reward. Like like it's all very, military stuff. But she's ruthless. She's
absolutely.
It's
like when she plows through those soldiers at one point, and she's literally she's like a pinball. She goes from one to the next to the next to the next.
Yeah.
And like if you watch some of the behind the scenes to this, it's fantastic how they ended up filming some of that. But she's great. I love that. I love when she's in the IHOP and she's kicking the crap out of Superman, and she's basically telling him, because you have like compassion or sympathy, you hold back, like you're weak, and we don't. So we're going to beat you, and this is why. I thought that was I thought she was so good in this.
And I think it's one of the selling points of the film is that most times in this type of scenario, the main focus would be on the number one main villain, and everybody else would be in the background. If anything, more for comic relief than anything else.
Correct.
But you have Zod, and it's like he's great, and then when you don't have Zod, you got this girl, and she's great.
Yeah.
It's like. And she is not the main villain. No. It's all, she is under Zod. Zod is the main villain. Like looking at, I think looking at Superman 2, Terrence Stamp is the focus.
Right.
Ursa is just kind of,
more background.
More background and, pretty and...
She has a little bit of flair. She has a little bit, but it's not as much as...
The other guy is just like the big brute guy, and he's just, more for comic relief. And I'm assuming, like, the other guy that they're fighting in
It's-
Smallville.
that's
that
Namek.
big, tall.
Yeah.
That, like he's supposed to be like I think
A
that.
non-type character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, it kind of reminded me of almost like like a Richard Keel, the Jaws type.
Yeah.
type.
I mean, basically,
Just
he
like
was
a
he
guy
was the
was
muscle.
huge. Yeah,
That's all
big,
he was.
big guy.
But I thought one of the big
But you never
times-
see his face.
No,
right?
he's always got that breather over
Okay,
him.
like not even when you were on the ship, he
yeah.
wasn't walking around somewhere. I didn't recognize.
I like the fact that we get, Chris Nolan and Snyder and oh gosh, who wrote the film with them? I'll come back to that later. They wanted to really try to ground this film. So instead of having this crystal fortress of solitude, the Fortress of Solitude in this film is basically the ship, the
20,000-year-old ship.
Yeah, the buried ship that's there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's where Clark learns about himself. It's where the ship basically makes the suit for him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, which all makes sense.
Well, so that was one of my questions we were watching. I was sitting there going, I'm like, okay, this ship is 20,000 years old. It predates Jor-El and Kal-El.
Mm-hmm.
It's been there for tens of thousands of years. And it's like, I'm like, okay, how did the suit get there? But then,
I mean, to me,
it's
once Clark puts the key into the ship and it uploads Jor-El's
and that's what
program,
that's what I didn't get.
To me, it's like,
it was
to me at that point, Jor-El is setting the stage for his son and creating that. Which actually, I thank you for talking about this, because to me, the next scene that occurred after that, the flight scene, I think that is one of the best flying scenes out of any superhero film. I really enjoy that whole entire sequence when he's trying to fly, doesn't get it right, and completely crashes down, and then starts to absorb, or figures out that he has to manipulate the gravity around him. And we start to see that as like the little, the granules of dirt and the snow start to lift up around him, and he starts to manipulate his own gravity. And that's how he ends up figuring out how to fly. To me, where he's flying all over the world is great. There's even a nod to Superman the movie where he flies up to space and hooks around the planet before he flies back down. That is definitely, to me, that's a nod to the Christopher Reeve film. At the end of all the Superman films, he always flies up into space and gives that smile at the camera. Obviously, there's no smile there, but to me, it's the same idea of him flying up into space and curving around. I really enjoy that scene. Even the music to that by Zimmer, I thought fantastic. Just kind of, it always thrills me to see Superman smile. You can see like the joy he's getting out of flying and how much fun he's having with that. I really, really like that scene.
There's one character in the movie though that I never really, I don't know. It always rubbed me the wrong way. And he's one of the Kryptonians. He's like
Is he the scientist guy?
The scientist
That's
guy.
Jack Sur.
He's like he's almost like a Mengele type character. And to me, it's like it's a it's a very common stereotypical characterization. He's walking around with the needles, and
he's like a henchman. He's like a henchman almost.
Right, but it's like
I mean, in Superman lore, Jack Sur is a pretty bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, in this, he's just a scientist that like figures out where.
He plays too much the card like the evil scientist you would find if you were going up against the Germans. I'm like okay,
I think to me it's like, they needed a guy, because listen, we all know Zod's not scientific, neither is Faora. Like, you needed that scientific character to figure out where the Codex was.
Yeah,
and
but his accent was like.
Oh yeah.
Completely very different from everybody else. He had a totally stereotypical type accent, this type of character that you've seen in dozens of other films.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, okay, I'm like that. I didn't care for. But then the one guy I did really like, Christopher Maloney.
Love Christopher Maloney.
I like his character. I like his he's almost like he's a military guy. He's bold. He's boundless. He runs out of bullets shooting to get there, and he's like, all right,
now he takes his knife out.
Pulling his knife,
and he knows
he's going down.
Yeah,
well, he went to the automatic weapon.
Yeah.
Then he went to the revolver, and now he's going down to the knife. Like, he's not giving in. He knows he's completely outclassed.
Yeah,
but he's
he's going to go down fighting.
He's going down. And he's going to wind up getting that knife. Into her neck. and the blade's gonna break against her skin.
And she takes out her own blade.
Right.
And that's what she says, that great line. And the one thing I really enjoyed, so the military in this, to me, responds exactly how if this were to happen. And Perry White says this to Lois at one point when Lois says that she's going to drop the story because when she finally realizes who Superman is and she meets Clark, Perry says to her, like, can you imagine how people would react knowing that a person like this existed?
Yeah.
Because that's absolutely true. If we had a person like that on this planet with that much power, what would we do? How would we react? Because that, like Jonathan Kent says, like that's going to change how we see things. That's going to change our ideas about religion and where we are in this universe.
Oh my God! It would be
the ramifications.
It wouldn't even just be headline news. There would be riots. There would be all cities around the world with people.
Just how would we react about that? Yeah. And it's such a great way to touch on this because Superman has always been seen as this godlike person. And they attack that head on almost in this. They especially show him at one point in a church with a picture of Jesus kneeling down in the background, almost sacrificing himself on the stained glass
window, and it's like, okay,
that
was not an accident.
Right, obviously that was done on purpose. And he's in church talking to a priest. So, and he's basically talking about either helping mankind or letting them or saying that he doesn't even know if he can trust mankind. Mm-hmm. So to me, like, it's just some very powerful imagery and scenes that they put into this to focus on what we would be like, and just when he's getting interrogated. Mm-hmm. It's a joke to have him in handcuffs, and I mean we know who he is, so we're watching in the audience and like we're laughing at that, like that's such a joke. But Superman's like, I do it because it makes him feel safe. The S emblem, and they're talking about how that's represented as the House of El, the symbol for hope.
This is the funny joke I told the Chris. I said, wouldn't it be the House of S, not L? They got the wrong letter. It looks like an S, not an L. And he's just like, that's not funny.
Because it's not funny. That was done in Birthright. Mark Waid, I believe, came up with the idea that the S itself actually stood for something, and it stood for it was the emblem for the House of El. I don't know if that was done before Mark Waid. I'm pretty sure that he ended up coming up with that, and to me that makes sense. And that happened in the book Birthright, which came out in like 2003 or 2004, and that for a lot of people that saw this movie in 2013, 9 years later, there's a lot of people that saw this. They're not comic book goers, so they don't know that. So like they hear that on screen and they kind of like scoff at it. Like one of our family members scoffed at it. Was like, that's so stupid. Oh, it's a symbol for a house.
Yeah, but I thought they even did that in Superman the movie, where that was like the family crest.
That was the family crest, but it didn't mean anything other than it was the family crest. And now, but when Henry Cavill says this is the symbol for hope, like it's my house symbol, but it's also on Krypton.
No, but to me, like a house symbol is a crest.
Right, but the meaning behind it of what it means, and I think him saying that in this, some people were like, why is that all of a sudden? Why are they starting to like put that in there? And that there actually was some history to that as to why they chose to have that.
Now, oddly enough, in this movie, I don't know that they really show too many on-screen deaths, except for Zod. But like,
I mean, you're assuming that a lot, thousands of people,
thousands upon thousands.
I mean,
this to me died in that battle.
If we get to this controversial scene, the destruction in Metropolis, and to me, it's a 9/11 event. To me, it's you're talking thousands of
deaths.
And
to me, when I was watching the scenes of where even before Superman and Zod were fighting and causing buildings to collapse, buildings were already collapsing based on those machines
from the gravity,
But to me, the buildings collapsing definitely brought me to
9/11
scenarios. But from a movie standpoint, I found it very reminiscent of the scenes in The War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, where the people were running away once all hell started to break loose.
Yeah.
It had that sort of a feel, and even a little bit Independence Day.
Yep.
When they were going, something like I definitely saw that influence.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and one of the things that I don't know if you noticed this, but a lot of the Kryptonian ships almost look like insects.
Yeah. Well, that was done on purpose because
Like
everything that
they
was
almost
done.
look like fleas or beetles. Or
Yes.
Like okay.
And if you listen to Snyder when he talks about this, I believe, if this is correct, that the way that they design things on Krypton, and when we see Krypton at the beginning of the film, they base a lot of their ships and everything on stuff in nature.
Okay, because
So
even a
kind
lot
of like structured things.
yeah, a lot of the
nature.
ships in the beginning of the movie, like they almost look like dragonflies.
Yes.
Flying. Okay.
And they try to they emulated their
Gotcha. Okay.
their I don't know, planet, or I don't want to say insects, but like the environment around them and the organisms that were there.
Mhm.
So I think you're right. That's why they ended up, I think, looking like that.
Now, this is something I want you to explain to the viewers because I had to ask you about this. And I don't know if this is really obvious, but to me, it's not really obvious what the hell the Codex was. Because to me, it looked like, an old skull from a Kryptonian who's probably been dead for 1,000 years. And to me, it was more something that should have been like, an idol.
Right.
Almost like in Planet of the Apes where they, they're worshiping Caesar. And I'm like, this is an old skull.
Yeah.
What's so important about it?
The only thing that I really know about it is that it has basically DNA in it that is extracted and it's used for the planned embryos that are now given to the houses that are given to families that want.
Because I just
child.
don't know that they really explain that well.
I
to
agree.
something that makes sense. Because you look at it like they talk about it, and then he's going to get it, and I'm like, it's a skull.
I think you're basically like and you're almost inferring from whatever, like the little information that they give you, but basically it has like the DNA in it of, what they say, like a billion Kryptonians. Like I don't know how one skull has the DNA from billions of Kryptonians,
Right. And it's
unless you're
like,
just talking about the heritage behind it, because essentially like we have the DNA from our ancestors. So if you're trying to extrapolate that DNA into creating new life, you are going to get a piece of that history with it. But with Krypton,
they almost make it seem like the entire future population of Krypton is in there. Like these are the people that haven't been born yet.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well then
because they don't make babies like the traditional way. They're literally taking the DNA from this and they're creating an embryo, and then that person is being bred to form a certain class.
Okay, so whatever parents are raising one of these children that they're only doing, it has nothing to do with their DNA. They're not mating, creating an embryo. They're just pulling one of these embryos from the Codex and saying, okay, here you go. Here's yours. Raise this child.
Right, but I think it is a part of like it does happen, but there are bloodlines that are a part of the Codex.
Okay.
And the House of El is one of the oldest houses.
Okay.
So
it's Kryptonian
eugenics. Technology,
okay.
With all that stuff.
Okay.
But
I just don't think they do a very good job of.
No, I agree with you. I don't
They
think
just kind of
I think it's
throw
glossed
it out
over.
there,
Yeah.
but it's not. It's like the rules aren't really defined.
No, I agree with you. I think it's a little bit more of interpretation rather than anything else. I think Snyder's gone into it a little bit about the Codex.
To me, I did find that the beginning scenes in Krypton, which are radically different from almost all other movies that.
Well, the Superman, the movie that shows Krypton, it's very cold.
Yeah, it's almost like they're in the Antarctic and crystalline structures. It's weird.
Yeah,
but it was different.
It's very almost without emotion because there's no color. It's very plain.
Everything's just like white.
But this, to me, it's very different. There's all these different animals that are all over the place. I mean, even Jor-El at one point rides this one Haruka, I think it's called, this animal that flies, and it's not a machine. It's organic. It's living, and they have this. What is it called? Like, what's that? It's like a mutual benefit from each other. What's whatever that relationship, symbiotic relationship. Yeah.
To me, I think I found a lot of the scenes to be very CG, and it was like I felt like I wasn't watching a real landscape scenario. I was watching just a projection. Images that were created with computer graphics.
Yeah.
And had no basis in reality.
But to me, what was nice about it was like there was two different scenarios. Like you had the main area of of Krypton in that main city where the council was, and then at some point you leave all that and you go out to almost like you want to say like a countryside where the House of El settlement was,
Right.
and that was completely on the outskirts, and you can see how different the landscape was between like the main city itself and then this. I thought Krypton was very, very interesting. I thought they threw a lot out there as far as technology. Like I said, the different landscapes. The way Krypton works in this is that there's basically a caste system. So you have classes, and Zod even talks about that at one point, or maybe it was Jor-El, where you talk about, you're a worker, you're a warrior, you're a scientist, you're you're in politics. So something of in that nature, and like your life is basically planned out for you, which is one of the reasons why Kal-El is so special, is because he's born naturally and he gets to choose. So again, you're going back to that role of choice, and I think that keeps that one thing of choice that keeps coming up in this film, and it's it's one of those areas where we get towards the battle between Superman and Zod.
Well, before we get to that, I found it relatively unbelievable that nobody on the planet decided to get into a ship and try to escape, because their ships have interplanetary capability.
But the council was telling them that nothing was going wrong, that the planet was fine. The only people that really knew that this was happening was Jor-El and Lara, and they tried to convince the council. It was very similar
But I think Zod,
Superman the movie.
I think Zod believed it. That's why he was going in there to overthrow.
Zod believed to the point that they could still save the planet.
Okay.
And that's but not about. He wanted to try to save the planet and save the Codex. That was his whole goal. So that his mission never changed from that fact. But Jor-El and Lara still tried to convince the council, and the council didn't think that. It was very similar to Superman the movie,
where they just don't believe.
They don't believe that's going to happen.
And then all of a sudden it's happening, and
it's too late.
It's too late.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, final battle.
So we get towards that final battle, and where Superman comes in, as Zod's ship is right about to destroy the aircraft carrier. That's that large aircraft with Superman's pod in it. Baby Kal-El's pod. You get Superman comes in, and Zod tells him this ship is the only thing that can save Krypton, and Superman says that Krypton had its chance, and he makes that decision to cut that off and let the human race live.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't do that, Zod's gonna regrow Krypton on Earth, and again he's making that choice to stand in front of the human race. And then we finally get to, and then that just starts, and then that, of course, the Phantom Zone opens up, pulls everybody back in with the exception of Zod and Superman. Now, the original ending, Zod gets pulled into the Phantom Zone.
And that's the end.
And that's the end.
Ooh.
And Snyder said, no,
I want a showdown.
I want Superman to have to make a choice.
Clash of the Titans.
And he's like, I want these two to go at it. So
I think that makes for a better film.
And then,
because that's a total cliche ending,
right?
Save the day, the ships hit, and then boom, and it's over.
Well, it's nice and convenient.
And it's an ending very nicely wrapped in a bow, typical Hollywood ending. So I think I didn't realize that was like a thing where they said, no, we got to do more, because I think that gave it a more characteristic ending.
And you get to that point where let's talk about the destruction. So one of the biggest criticisms this film has is the destruction of Metropolis and the buildings that are getting destroyed. And why doesn't Superman take the fight away from the city to save all these people? All these people are getting killed. Doesn't he care about that? My response to that whole thing is, you have these two godlike people that can barely get hurt, and they're fighting in basically a city. Like it doesn't. They're getting thrown through buildings in concrete, and it's not going to hurt them. They're
they're fighting for their lives.
Right.
Like this, it's not about like, okay, let's stop and go over here.
And that's part of it. Like if Superman started to stop and started to try to save people and move them away, all Zod's going to do is just kill everybody he can in the meantime, because that's his goal at this point. And he even said at that point, like, it's like, you stole my soul. Like you've taken that from me, and now he's going to take everything he can from him. So Zod would never have stopped, and I think that's one of the reasons why Superman tried to just take him down wherever he could, and And unfortunately, that just it was just catastrophic damage. And most of that, I think, was really done by Zod throwing Superman around.
Yeah.
Some of that was caused probably by Superman as well. But these guys, they're two godlike beings. They're going to cause unbelievable destruction.
And that's I think that's the realism of it because that's what would happen.
Right.
It's like in the Japanese monster movies. When Godzilla's
Right.
fighting some other guy, Tokyo's gonna get destroyed.
Yeah.
Because they're huge and they're
I mean,
so
it's terrible. I mean, the amount
two
of destruction is terrible.
Kryptonians going at it.
Yeah.
No holds barred, full fledged. I think that gave it a level of realism that was not in previous films.
No.
That downplayed.
I mean, we'll look at the battle in
destruction.
Superman 2 between Superman and the three Kryptonians.
Mhm.
You barely had damage. I mean, you had some damage to Metropolis, but
Yeah.
not like this. You didn't have little buildings crumbling to the ground
Right, exactly.
like they did in this film. So I
Yeah.
mean, you literally take it to a whole nother level. But I think it also just shows how powerful they are.
I do feel that what did they call that thing that was doing the gravity thing?
The World Engine.
World engine. I felt like the world engine scenario, like the gravity field was getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't know if it was supposed to envelop the whole planet.
I think eventually that's what it was supposed
to
to
me
do.
it was going very slowly.
Yeah.
It never made it like
Well, it's not gonna happen in an instant.
no, but like
The world is
it was
very big.
but it was going for a while, and it never made it like more than a half a mile perimeter around the world engine.
Well,
I mean, it was going like 5 feet at a time.
what would you have been happy with?
I don't know, but like 5 feet at a time is going to take 20 years to go around the world.
That's what it takes. They're terraforming a planet.
I felt like I'm sitting there like, okay, like like the things were rising and going down. Boom. I'm like, okay, in about 10 cycles,
Yeah.
the whole city's gone.
The couple of criticisms I have. One, there was a lot of damage done to the city. Would I have liked to have seen less? Yeah, I think you probably could have cut the fight scene maybe a minute or two and taken some of that damage back. But I think part of it was they wanted to really showcase these two going at it and the damage that could be done.
I think they wanted to showcase the realistic scenario of what would happen with two Kryptonians going full scale onslaught in a crowded in a city with tons of buildings.
One of my biggest problems with this film is that there's no blood when these guys fight. No blood. And I have a problem with that.
Zod and
Superman. No blood. And I have a big problem with this because in the beginning,
I don't even know if there was bruising.
Towards the beginning of the film,
Now keep in mind when Jor-El and Zod fought,
right.
Zod got that
got
cut
cut.
on his face.
But at that point they're mortal. They're mortal on Krypton.
Okay.
So that's that. I mean, to me, I would expect that.
Oh,
But when
okay.
but when Superman discovers the ship and that alien, I don't know, robot that's flying around there whips at him, it actually does cut him.
Yes.
Because it's from Krypton. So to me, that makes sense.
Yeah.
When
which to me, in my opinion, when it attacked Lois Lane, should have killed her outright. Like if you can draw blood on Superman, I think in Love Tap when Lois Lane would send her, would kill her
Well, it
instantly.
did send her flying, but she just she did survive.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a cool way to use heat vision to cauterize her wound. I thought that was great.
Mhm.
But I think between Zod and Superman fighting, when those guys are going at it, and even when Superman's fighting the other Kryptonians in Smallville, he should have been cut because these are Kryptonians fighting Kryptonians. Those guys, that would be like John and I fighting. Like we're going to cause bruising to each other.
Yeah.
We have the same.
We're on the same level.
We're on the same playing field. When you have two Kryptonians going at it, it's the same thing. You're going to have that. When you have, if someone, if one of the soldiers was shooting the Kryptonians, obviously not because the weapons aren't going to affect them. But if you have two Kryptonians going at it, these guys should have had cuts. They should have had bruises.
Black eyes.
Like we should have seen something to that effect, and we don't see any of that.
And I think that was just done to make it more, I want to say, antiseptic.
I mean, I don't know if it's that or they just want to show these guys don't bleed normally or they don't.
Well, I mean,
get
keep
cut,
in mind,
or they heal that fast.
Right. Well, keep in mind, I think thousands of people died in that onslaught in the city, and I don't think you see a single death on screen.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's more
You know what I
just
mean? Like,
implied.
yeah, it's all implied. Like you don't see people burning up, you don't see people getting crushed and killed and maimed.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and some of that could be for the rating to keep it at PG-13 and not drag it into an R.
Yeah,
But I highly doubt that blood, a certain amount of blood, I think would be acceptable. That wouldn't drag it into an R.
well, this is why, because of that, this is why you have movies like Brightburn where somebody says we need to
Yeah,
we need to see what would happen if a Kryptonian
and they,
kill
did it.
people.
Yeah.
You know,
So, but,
I did constantly sometimes in my head was thinking about the
Oh, about
scenarios of
Brightburn?
like the Mon Pa Kent characters
Mhm.
and the kid, and what would the kid do, and it was
no,
it
very,
was
very.
interesting.
It's a mirror image of what would happen.
Yeah.
But that to me, that's one thing that I really wish they would have done a little bit differently and actually shown some actual damage when these two Kryptonians were fighting one another, especially at the very end of the fight. So,
So name dropping in the movie, like they definitely had. I think you said Wayne Enterprises.
well, there's a lot of Easter eggs. Obviously, there's a Wayne Enterprise. There's a satellite,
couple of LexCorp scenarios.
LexCorp trucks.
And I was telling Chris, I said I really felt they had some wasted opportunities there, where they had like some, either businesses or whatever, where like names of boats and stuff. Like the one boat was the Debbie Sue, and I'm like, that doesn't mean anything.
At least I don't think it does.
I don't think it.
At least I don't think it does.
If it did, you would know.
Yeah,
But I'm like, I felt like they could have planted some Easter eggs with some other characters that are not used, or some creators. Because there's a lot
Well,
of different people.
it's
Like they should have called it like the Swan.
But Zach's, Snyder's wife is named Deborah. I think it's Deborah Snyder. So the Debbie Sue.
Oh, that could be from him.
So
But I think maybe they should have done a little bit of some homages, subtle homages to some characters.
Yeah.
Whether
And like,
Siegel,
the
Schuster, Swan, Plastino.
Yep.
Like
They could have
even
they could have
and,
done that.
and those are golden age guys. They're like modern people
Yeah.
too. Like I felt that. But then of course they did have their product placement. They had to get their product placement in.
Sears,
Sears,
7-Eleven.
7-Eleven, and IHOP. Definitely
They paid some money.
to get into that film.
Yeah. So that
Without
was
a
pretty
doubt.
funny. I mean, so, and, at the very end, we get to one of the biggest controversial scenes is, of course, Superman has Zod in the headlock,
Snapping his neck.
and Zod's got his got his heat vision.
He's gonna kill a
He's gonna
family.
kill that family, and Superman keeps telling him, "Stop! Don't do it." And Zod says, "Never." And at that point, Superman makes the decision to snap his neck and kill him.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, what is it? Zod's not going to get rehabilitated. Zod's not going to change his mind.
He's not.
Zod is programmed
Well, for all the
as Zod.
now, I will say this: when I first saw this film and I saw that scene happen,
I think you were in shock.
I was a little bit in shock, and I was a little upset about it because I'm like,
Superman doesn't
Superman
kill.
doesn't kill.
Batman kills.
No, he doesn't kill
Batman
either.
doesn't kill you?
No, it happenstance maybe, but Batman doesn't kill. And with Superman, that's his goal, is to not kill people, and because he always sees himself better than that. Otherwise, you turn into the criminal. And I had such a problem with that the first couple times I saw it. I saw this movie like 6 times, I think, in the theater.
In the theater.
In the theater, and towards the end, like I started to really think about it, and I even listened to what Snyder had been saying at the time, and I bought into it because he's saying at this point, he's like, Superman has to make a choice. He's like, and it's a hard choice, and he said, I did this on purpose. Like, this was done with intent, that he had to make the decision. What was he going to do? And at the end of the day, let's say Superman knocks Zod out. Because what's he going to do? He can't throw him up into space. Zod has the same abilities as him.
Can't throw him in jail.
Can't throw him in jail. He's going to bust out. There's no physical prison that can hold this guy. They don't know about kryptonite yet, so they can't do anything with that. There's no scenario at this where at some point Zod doesn't wake up and continue to do what he was doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there was any other way out of this. The Phantom Zone is closed.
Mm-hmm.
You can't toss him in there. Because those are your options. You either throw him into the Phantom Zone, kill him, or let him wake up and continue destruction.
You know what? I think it was a bold, creative choice
Yes.
that did not change or ruin the character or the core of the character of Superman.
Well, and I think also you see his remorse afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think if they didn't do that, I think it would have made it worse for me.
He didn't enjoy doing
But
it.
and I think you see that, like when he screams out in pain that he had to do that. I think you see that it affected him, and how upset he was.
Yeah, it's really, it's a scenario where, like, basically Superman grows up. The character of Superman grows up and joins the adult world. It's not, the same type of, like, because I can tell you right now, like the Christopher Reeve Superman, I don't
No.
think would ever do it.
Well, technically, the villains die in Superman too. He does let them die
he lets him die.
when they lose their powers and they kind of like jump in like the fortress and they kind of like they just disappear.
Oh, okay.
Well, in the one version they do that, and then the Donner version, when he turns back time again, he puts them back into the Phantom Zone.
They didn't just drop into like a ball pit and bounce around.
But it's just a scenario that I think was I think at first I do kind of think it is hard to watch because you don't expect Superman to do that. But I think when you start to really think about the scenario that he's put in this situation, they wrote him into this corner on purpose because he had to make a choice. And again, you're going back to that, like that theme of choice is throughout this film. And he gets to the end of that and it's like, okay, he makes the ultimate choice and it's
right. He has the ability to choose because had he been, a standard Kryptonian, the decision probably would have been made for him. He wouldn't be able to do it,
right.
or not do it, or not do it.
Yeah,
based on how he's kind of.
And I think that that I think that also solidifies him to say, you know what, and this is my own personal thought on this, is that after this happens, it's my theory that he doesn't want to have to kill again. Like he feels that he knows now what it feels like to take a life, and says, you know what, like I don't want to do this again. So I think I would love to still see another Henry Cavill film. And one of the other reasons why I wanted to do this is because there's been so much Henry Cavill news with the announcement of the Zack Snyder Justice League cut being put on HBO Max. That's going to be coming out next year.
Okay.
So we're actually going to see a whole new version of the Justice League movie based on Zack Snyder's vision. So that should be a totally new film. We're going to see new scenes with the whole cast, including Henry Cavill without the mustache. And we're going to see... And Henry Cavill is already in talks, supposedly, with Warner Brothers to do other films. There's a lot of rumors of whether is it a Man of Steel sequel, or is it just a bunch of cameos in some of the upcoming films that are coming out, like between Shazam, Black Adam, Aquaman 2 maybe. So are we going to get him in there? I'm very excited because I really enjoyed Henry Cavill. I was really upset when there had been no movement on Superman since Justice League, and we're getting all these other films out there that I don't know. To me, Birds of Prey was okay.
Yeah,
not
filler.
Joker was fantastic, but all these other planned movies that they had going on in DC, and I'm like, but you're negating one of your top like breadwinners. Like, why would you not? He's one of your three pillars.
Yeah.
So to not have that going on for since essentially Batman vs Superman is the other, like, not essentially a solo film, but where he's one of the main characters. Justice League, he's not in that much. So I really want to see him get back into this character and have a solo film. Like, I want a whole film just around him. I don't want other supporting heroes.
Right.
I just want him to get his own film again. And before it's too late, I didn't want them to recast. Obviously, they're recasting with the Matt Reeves Batman film. They went with the younger character, a younger Batman. We don't even know if this Batman's tied into the DCEU at all. If it just takes place in the past, we don't know. We're gonna find all that stuff out. But ultimately, I really enjoy Man of Steel. Obviously, if you couldn't tell already. Every time I watch this film, it puts a smile on my face. I can't wait to see what develops in the next few months, and hopefully we get a new Man of Steel film.
Yeah, and I definitely enjoyed the Man of Steel film. I enjoyed it. I enjoy it more and more every time I see it. Real quick, one character we didn't talk, just real sidebar, the scientific guy on Earth. I actually kind of liked his character.
Oh, Emil Hamilton.
Yeah.
Well, it's a shame that he's a big character in the comics, and I'm kind of shocked that they threw him into the Phantom Zone. So I'm wondering, like, is there a way to get him out of the Phantom Zone? Because he in the comics has kind of helped Superman.
Oh, I didn't even know he was from the comic.
Yeah, no, Emil Hamilton is he's a big scientist at Star Labs.
Oh, okay.
So
and I thought his characterization was good.
Yeah, I agree.
The I don't know, the top brass general guy,
Harry Lennox.
Yeah. His character was a little by the numbers, by the book.
Well, according to Zack Snyder, do you know who he's supposed to be? Who he turns into?
Who?
He turns into John Jones.
Oh, he's going to become he was supposed to be
He was
Martian
supposed to
Manhunter?
become Martian Manhunter.
Oh, that's kind of funny. Okay.
And his version of Justice League at the very end of the movie, there's like a little Easter egg where like he kind of morphs into John Jones at one point, and you see it, but none of the other characters. I don't know if anyone else sees it or not. Like you see storyboards. Like I don't know if it was filmed, but you definitely see a storyboard, and it's Harry Lennox, his character walking away, and then he turns around and he's Martian Manhunter.
Gotcha.
And so that, I mean, if that stays true, I think that's pretty cool.
Okay.
To put him in there, I wouldn't mind that one bit. But
I think with that, I think we went through.
I think we
pretty much
covered
all-
everything.
Well, we didn't say anything about Superman's real mother. And her
okay,
character-
Laura. Yeah, that was Eileen
She's in there.
Zur.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's in there. Pretty not too much.
No, she's not. She's just on the Krypton scenes. I liked her character. You know, I mean, you can see the remorse that she has for having to put her son and give her son up, and that she doesn't. At one point, she almost fights doing it, but knows that if she doesn't do it, he's going to surely die with them. I think even Jor-El says that to her.
Well, you know who I liked? I liked teenage Clark Kent.
Yeah,
I thought his character was very.
I thought that casting was well done.
Yeah, like I felt like he brought somehow he brought a depth to the
that
Clark
role.
Kent character.
Yep, and especially like at that teenage time where
yeah.
like there's so much that you're dealing with, so many changes that your own body's going through, and that he's probably experiencing. You know, when he's getting bullied, knowing that he could kill the kids if he wanted to, and he just has to sit there and take it.
Yeah.
And I really like the characterization that they did with him as a child, because and as a teenager, because it's like you have all of this power and you just have to hold back, and you can't do anything.
Yep.
Because if you did, you'd kill him.
Yep.
So, you know, I liked that they showcased that and how difficult and hard that must have been for him growing up.
Yeah, and I think it was a powerful scene when he saves the bus. You know, it's like he's like, what did he tell his dad? What am I supposed to do? Just let everybody die?
Right.
Like,
you know, you see him do the right thing.
Yeah. So no, I enjoyed that. But
So
to me overall, I enjoyed the film immensely. I think I give it a really solid 3 stars. I don't know if I'm at 3.5, but it's knocking on the door. It's knocking on the door at 3.5. I think it is a pretty well made film.
I'm happy to hear you say that. I'm very happy that John has liked this film more and more when he sees it. Because remember the first time we walked out and he was like, "It was good," and I walked out and I was elated, like I was so excited, and I remember him saying, "It was good." I was like, "That's not the reaction I wanted from Johnny Mel," but.
The movie has grown on.
But yeah, hearing like subsequent viewings that it's gotten more and more, I'm happy with that. So I think we're gonna wrap it up.
I think we're good.
All right, so guys, we're gonna jet out. Everyone, stay safe out there. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time with the movies.
Yep. Have a good one.